Dr. Mary, it's really nice to have you here today in sunny Miami. Could you just give a quick introduction to yourself?
I'm happy to. My name is Dr. Mary Donohue. I am founder and CEO of the Digital Wellness Center. We are a responsible gaming player safety company that uses neuroscience to reset the brain using dopamine, oxytocin, all of those very cool things. In 2 years, we've grown into a global company. We have over 500,000 users now, and consistently we're seeing what we do, what we measure, and how we apply our patent provides relief for players in less than 3 minutes.
Okay, brilliant. And so very relevant and pertinent to be here at the Gaming Leaders Summit then with so many of the big operators in North and South America.
Yes.
Your research draws a kind of line through generations. You've got boomers exploiting physical systems, Gen Z kind of rewriting digital ones with, use of AI and anonymity. In the industry that we're in gaming, where kind of payments and fraud are evolving faster than regulation oftentimes, how do we and how do you design systems that keep pace with these behavioral shifts we're seeing?
In 2020, I came out with a book from McGraw-Hill called Message Received. Yes, that's a shameless plug. And what I did was identify how your brain processes information through technology and where the problems are and how it's causing stress, how it's causing chronic anxiety, and a number of other problems. But what was startling in the research and what came out clearly is this idea that environment is what has shaped your preference for digital information and for risk. And so, for example, boomers who we use academically, boomers 1945 to 1960, prefer auditory. When they went to the workplace, they had auditory experiences. They heard productivity. They read minutes in a meeting. Those kinds of things. You heard a typewriter. The workplace was a totally different noise. But also they received their news from the radio, different things like that, which meant for risk, for responsible gaming, whatever you do has to be in the written word. And it has to be grammatically correct. And when you do that, they actually get the message. When we look at Gen X, they're very visual. They're what we call the TV generation. When they went into the workplace, when they were in school, TVs were wheeled into the classroom and big events were watched and experienced visually. They're what we call the CNN generation. Meaning that's how they process information. They're also the generation that loves PowerPoints. It almost killed me earlier when I didn't use a PowerPoint, but I knew I could speak without a PowerPoint. And then when we look at millennials, kinesthetic. They've been online since probably the 5th grade in most cases. That's tapping, that's making things work. It's the environment that they were exposed to. And they are also the generation that loves to process information kinetically. So from Gen X standpoint, when we send them a message, when we engage them in a proactive way of calming down so you don't make a bad bet, it's a visual experience. With a millennial, it's a kinesthetic experience. What do I mean by that? Put your shoulders up, put your shoulders down. We talk about breathing, leaning back, leaning in, or any manner. Binaural beats is a great way for boomers to work it. This is all comment. Then we get to Gen Z, which is the digital generation. And everybody's saying, well, this generation doesn't get off their phone. They can't complete a thought. They have less than 1 second to think about things, and their attention span is less than a goldfish. Well, I don't know why we're surprised about this. This is the first generation that was taped when they were born. They were put on social media. They were told in classrooms to, oh, I'm sorry, it's COVID. You can't meet with other people. You can't play. You can't do anything interesting. Oh, by the way, do school online. So you plant corn, you get corn. That's why they're adapting very quickly to crypto. They're adapting very quickly to the poly markets. They're adapting very quickly to things that gambling companies are moving towards. And when we look at responsible gaming for them or proactively stopping them from making bad decisions online, we've used TikTok, which is their method of conversation, very, very successfully with our clients. And what we know is when you give them that experience, they use it. For example, we had 244,000 people watch a video we did about stress at school. 11,000 of them interacted with a button we put on TikTok. TikTok said, Mary, you'll get 2. So 11,000 is a lot more than 2, but the right message, the right medium. And Marshall McLuhan really pioneered this work.
Okay, that's fascinating. You also talking about regulation needing emotional intelligence to stay relevant. How do the operators and the regulators build emotionally intelligent frameworks that don't slow innovation, but are keeping kind of risk factors in check?
So emotional intelligence in regulation means understanding that humans don't make a decision based on policy. They make a decision in the moment. And what is that moment? So when you start to look at emotional regulation, which is, I've pioneered this work for 10 years now, since Walmart. And we know that when you begin to understand what's triggering emotional dysregulation, which is stress, which is time of day, which is economics, we've been talking a lot about economics here, then you know how to solve a problem. So emotional regulation is very much like an optometrist saying to you, okay, look through this lens. Can you see clearly? Look through this lens. Can you see clearly? And when we use emotional regulation, which is allowing the player to control their moods, asking them how they feel, you're adding a different lens. So you begin to understand while they're calming themselves down, how to calm them down. And that's the AI we pioneered, if that helps you understand.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the most kind of proactive ideas is that cheating isn't moral failure, but it's environmental adaptation. How can leaders in this space reframe the way that they view some of these behaviors, thinking about promo abuse and things, not to excuse them, but to understand what's driving them from the player perspective?
Cheating is probably the most misunderstood ever in risk science. I just talked to you earlier about how people process information. So when you're stressed, when you were in school, you were doing your maths and you were stressed.
Yeah.
Wasn't there always that part of you that said, gosh, if I just take this cheat sheet in, or if I just write this formula on my hand, that stressful situation caused you to do something normally you wouldn't do. You don't strike me as somebody who would ever cheat, but you could in the right situation, in the right moment, in the right context. When we look at emotional regulation and when we look at generational processing, this allows us to begin to understand cheating in the moment. Cheating is a stress behavior. Yes, there is a percentage of people that are already pre-wired to do that, but it's such a small percent. So you need to begin to look at how to build your processes around how each generation is triggered by stress, and then begin to understand what to give them so that they are no longer stressed and you don't have to worry about it. Now, I'm not talking about the mob or criminal organizations or any of those kinds of things. I'm talking about everyday people, particularly people who are very adept at technology. How do you help them not use their powers for bad and use their powers for good, so to speak?
And between the generations that we've been discussing, what are some of those biggest differences in the kind of stress triggers that you're seeing?
For boomers in particular, what we saw in casinos was time.
Right.
Time on the machines, and then mood. They identified as lonely. So I'm a big believer in the mixed method methodology of research. So not only did we put up QR codes with an opportunity to just release some stress, we used humor. And then we went and we interviewed people. Humor is the one thing across generations that we have found that is agnostic. Everybody responds to humor. And it seems, based on our research, 55% of the time in less than 3 minutes to reduce stress.
Okay.
Then we talked to them, and this is across generations. What struck me from boomers and Gen Z, so the oldest and the youngest we've been studying, is loneliness. Loneliness caused them to gamble. And once we begin to figure out how to create community, for example, in bingo, we put our opportunities in an online bingo chat in terms of part of the chat. There were 1,200 players, 897 engaged, because they need community. We all need community. That's part of your brain, how it's wired.
Okay, fascinating. And then finally, you described Gen Z as being comfortable with blurred realities, fluid identities. How do you see that mindset reshaping trust in payments and compliance and identity?
Trust is going to be experiential with Gen Z. We saw this with millennials after the crash of the market in 2008. They only trust their parents. You still see them going to their parents for things that would never normally be something that the previous generations went to their parents for. But the other part, Laura, that's absolutely fascinating about this generation is you have to continue to prove it to them on a constant basis. They'll dismiss you in a matter of seconds. We heard today that it takes 9 months for somebody to come back after they had a bad experience. Well, if you break that down by generations, it'll probably take 9 months for a boomer or a Gen X to go back. But a Gen Z will find new things. For example, they're finding poly markets. They're finding all kinds of other things and betting because it's natural to them. Why would I give you all my information when I know I can bet this way? There's a fascinating company here by a fellow named Milton founded it, and I got a chance to talk to him today. And he started out just having more bets than he could take, like just among his friends. And he put down on paper who was betting what and said, okay, who else wants to be a part of this? And he started a company. He is like a cusper, plus or minus 5 on Gen Z or a millennial. That's exactly how they solve problems. He didn't go to a FanDuel. He didn't go to DraftKings. He just solved the problem and went to his friends. So millennials go to their parents, Gen Z go to their friends.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you so much. It's really exciting and interesting topic and conversation.
Thank you for having me, Laura.
Thanks.